like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind.
Visit StogieGeeks.com/Debonaire for a list of retailers who carry Debonaire cigars. Buy some today and get a little more Debonaire. Welcome back, everyone, to the Stogie Geeks Show. Will's got a segment on Cuba and baseball.
Yes, I do.
I've played baseball my whole life, Will, so.
Yeah, and, it was interesting because, when I went down to Cuba, obviously baseball is the national sport down there for sure. Even though the week I was down there, it was the Olympics, so it kind of took a back seat.
Mm-hmm.
But I had planned on doing something around the baseball because obviously the playoffs begin this week in baseball. So I think the Red Sox have a good shot.
I was just going to say the Red Sox are doing well this year, although they just lost one to the Blue Jays.
But they won the division.
We're still doing pretty good from what I don't follow it as much as I used to or as much as I should, but they are doing well.
Yeah, I'm a Phillies fan, and we had a good run up. Now we're rebuilding, and we'll see what happens. The rebuilding effort I thought stalled the last 10 games. I think they really took a step down the last 10 games, believe it or not. So,
are you a Yankees fan, Will?
No, Phillies.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a Red Sox fan, I don't like the Yankees, but I do respect them as an organization. It's interesting you see Paul Joyle posting on Facebook about that. I think they just did something for Big Papi or something.
They really did, and I tell you what. There's obviously these two teams have an intense rivalry, but every time there's been, whether it's 9/11, whether it was the Boston bombing, now obviously those are very serious. Even Big Papi, there's a definite mutual respect, which is great to see that.
It is. It really is.
Really, yeah.
You don't often. You see that sometimes in football, but not really.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, exactly.
A lot of drama in football, but Cuba. So it's interesting. Not just Cuba, but I think a lot of Latin American countries and baseball kind of go hand in hand. And a lot of our favorite players, like Big Papi, we were talking about, come from Dominican and these other Latin American countries that are famous for cigars, but they're really big into baseball as well. So I thought it was a really good segment, Will.
Yeah, and actually one thing that kind of inspired the segment a bit, and it's unfortunate, was the death of Jose Fernandez, which he was, obviously he was a person who came over from Cuba. He actually escaped from Cuba on a boat with his family. He was a young pitcher. He was probably an up-and-coming pitcher, and he passed away tragically in a boating accident. One thing I immediately saw was that there was a definite connection with him and the South Florida community, and in particular, the cigar community. I saw a lot of people had pictures with him. I saw Gabriel and Grace Alvarez, they had just seen him apparently a couple weeks before he died, and they had some pictures with him.
Not to switch to golf, but also Arnold Palmer, right?
Arnold Palmer, yeah.
Recently passed away as well.
Yeah, and then you talk about someone who is a fabric in the North Carolina. I think he may have lived in North Carolina for a short time, but he was a big part of golf. Golf is bigger in North Carolina, in my opinion, than NASCAR. I really think it's
really. I was going to say that any other sport other than NASCAR.
I say college basketball. I'd put one. I would put golf and Panthers probably at the next level right now.
Yep.
And then NASCAR. I think, but golf. There's a lot of people who follow golf, and I know we did a golf segment, and they're really big into it. They follow all the tournaments. They know all these golfers. I just watch the majors, if that.
Right.
But
now Cuba has a history in baseball, Will.
Yeah, so, and here was, when I was researching this segment, I found some facts that I was really amazed about. Obviously, one thing I didn't know is that if you go pre-Jackie Robinson, a lot of the Negro League players apparently spent time playing in Cuba. Apparently Josh Gibson and Sack.
Well, at that time, that was before.
I didn't know.
That was before embargo or anything like that, right?
Yeah. I did not know that, and they would play down. That's where they were playing. When they weren't playing in the Negro leagues, there were winter leagues down there where they would play. And then a lot of baseball teams would do tours of Cuba, kind of these goodwill, kind of like what the soccer teams I think do here over in Europe. They come over.
Well, and even in the NFL, I was watching a game at like 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. We're playing in the UK.
Yeah, they were playing in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously it's a way to kind of be an ambassador. But, some of the big, Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth went down there to play. There were minor league teams. So baseball had affiliations with minor league baseball, where there was a Florida single-A team, the Havana Cubans, but there was actually a AAA team in the International League called the Cuban Sugar Kings, which played in Havana. And the International League is actually where the Pawtucket team plays. And I think I want to say that Sugar Kings team was a Reds affiliate. I'm not 100% sure. But there are ties to cigars as well. So baseball is big in Cuba. And one thing that I also learned, and there was a really good article from Cigar Aficionado about 20 years ago that talks about some of these things too, is, you talk about the rolling room in Cuba. So this is going back pre-Castro, pre-revolution. One tradition in the rolling room is there's a lector who sits up at the front, and he reads the news of the day, to people who are rolling. This is, I guess, before they had TV and stuff like that. And I imagine, I didn't get to go see the factories when I was in Cuba. I imagine they don't have a lot of TVs in these factories, if they have them at all. So they would read the scores, but they also would put on baseball games on the radio as well.
And so these are U.S. Major League Baseball games?
Some are Cuban games, but yes, they would. The U.S. teams are very closely followed in Cuba.
Interesting.
So I know when I was reading about Jose Fernandez, his grandmother, he won Rookie of the Year, and when he won Rookie of the Year, they managed to get his grandmother out of Cuba to bring her there. But his grandmother was following him able to get a signal out of one of the stations in South Florida, and was able to hear a lot of his games down there. So that's, and they do have, going to the La Casa del Habanos, which are, again, higher end places to smoke. The average person isn't going to go there, lives in Cuba. They did have ESPN on there as well. So ESPN Deportes is on there. So, again, it is something that's very much followed down there. Another interesting fact was Fidel Castro pitched. He was a pitcher for the University of Havana. He was a right-handed pitcher. And after the revolution, there was a game with the Sugar Kings and Rochester. And I guess there was an exhibition game before that where Castro actually, now he had just taken over Cuba. He went in and pitched a couple of innings, I guess, and struck out a couple in this exhibition game. So they're definitely.
Now wait, before that, you said that Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth played on tour in Cuba.
Yeah, so they went on these goodwill tour teams that went down to Cuba in the winter.
But that was before the embargo?
That was before
when they played, right? If I get my baseball history correct, right?
Yeah, Ty Cobb is I want to say the 1910s, 1920s. Babe Ruth's the 1920s, 1930s.
Okay.
So yeah, they've gone down there.
Wow, that's interesting that we know history of baseball in the 1910s and 20s from Ty Cobb, who was just a iconic player, and then Babe Ruth to follow.
Yeah. So and
Babe Ruth was a cigar guy. He always had a.
Babe Ruth had a cigar, from what I understand.
And a lot of the movies and in whatever that depict Babe Ruth, he always had a cigar.
He always had a cigar, yeah. So that's something actually I actually thought about that when I said I got to research a little about Babe Ruth and cigars. I would maybe make another Debonaire Ideal down the road, because I am curious to see how much he.
But in the 20s and 30s, they were probably Cuban. They could be probably either, my guess, Will, knowing what I know about the cigar industry today, which is somewhat limited, in the 20s and 30s, probably American-grown tobacco and Cuban-grown tobacco.
That's correct.
Right? Not the cigars that we know from Dominican and Nicaragua and Honduras and Costa Rica and all the other countries. Like back then, it was really American tobacco and Cuban tobacco.
Right, and that's when when Carlos Fuente Sr. was alive and the embargo happened. One thing he did, he was one of the first to start. Well, obviously he secured a lot of Cuban tobacco to continue to stay in business for a while, but he also was one of the first to start, working with Dominican tobacco on a broader scale.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. It was mostly a lot of these old U.S. brands. If you go back to the old Nat Sherman Apoca, for example,
right?
That was Cuban tobacco. That they used in there. And then they brought the brand back a few years ago. But obviously, they're not using Cuban tobacco anymore. But there's also baseball players who came from Cuba. I think the most prominent one that I think we all know is Louis Tiant.
So Louis Tiant was of Cuban descent?
He came from Cuba.
Interesting.
I believe in the 75 World Series, which he pitched in for the Red Sox, I believe they let his parents come over.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, his son.
Wait, was the 75 World Series, was that pesky pole? I'm stretching my Red Sox.
That would
Joe Pesky hit a home run. 75. So 75 was before the Bucky Dent incident.
Oh,
there's a whole Red Sox baseball history that is like pseudo ingrained in my brain. I'm sure there's people who follow it that are like yelling at our podcast right now, Will.
Well, okay, first of all, let's be fair to you, Paul. You weren't even alive for that series.
I was not. I was not alive for that series. I grew up knowing the players, like Ted Williams. When I was a toddler, I used to try and say Carl Yastrzemski's name when I watched baseball, right? That was like when I was really little.
Right.
There's a whole history there.
Yeah. Now, pesky pole, I believe it's that big pole in Fenway, right? That's the big
pole.
That is,
it's the correct me if I'm wrong.
The right field.
Right, it is the right field pole is called Pesky's pole.
Yeah.
Because of the incident happened in, I want to say the 70s, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think it was named after some player. I want to say
Joe Pesky. Yeah, Pesky's pole is named after, I believe it's Joe Pesky.
Joe or Johnny Pesky.
Joe or Johnny Pesky, yes, you're correct. Yeah. Johnny Pesky. Thank you, Riley, our baseball aficionado.
That's me.
Thank you. Please chime in, Riley, and correct us. We're cigar geeks, and security nerd is me.
Yeah,
but
I believe they're putting I've heard something. I want to say either they replaced it or replacing it. Something they're going to put a new one up there. I believe they have to rebuild it.
Yeah, but there's a whole baseball history with interesting that we're talking about baseball. My wife and I started dating in 2003. We were together in 2004, right, when the Red Sox won like their first World Series in whatever it was, 40, 50, 60 years in 2004. So it's a very, like, whether you follow baseball or not, like if you're in New England and you were raised like a Red Sox and a Patriots fan, you remember 2004 as being like that year when we reversed the curse, right?
Yep. Yeah, you reversed the curse.
And baseball really, I mean, to me, to have a cigar and watch baseball, like that's like my son plays baseball now, right? And I played Little League growing up. Like, it's kind of I don't want to say it's a boring sport, but like there's a lot of like waiting around, like watching things, like waiting for something to happen kind of thing. And so I can see, we talk about football because obviously football season has started, right? We're in what week are we in football? Coming up on week 4, right?
We're finishing week 4.
Finishing week 4, going to week 5 of football.
Right.
But like baseball is a sport where really, like, if you're going to sit around and watch a baseball game, like, cigar is a great thing to have.
It is. It's a geek sport. Okay, so it's very stats driven.
It's very numbers driven. Yes. Well, yeah. RBIs and hitting average and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and it is something, like I said, I like it as a radio sport. One thing I did on Cigar-Coop when I described the bands, actually I stole that idea, and it was stolen from a Yankees announcer named Michael Kay, who was really kind of, and I'm not a Yankees fan, but obviously when I lived in New York, I would listen to a lot of baseball, and Michael Kay did the games. And Michael Kay had this way of describing a uniform, still to this day has a way of describing a uniform that you can listen to it on the radio and you feel like you're at the game.
Yeah, there's some epic, and I can see this being very today would be nostalgic, right?
Yeah.
Like back
Yeah.
in the day, it would be kind of like the norm. Sit around, listen to the radio, and have a cigar and listen to the baseball game.
Yeah.
And I'm sure back in the day, sit in the stadium or the baseball field and have a cigar while you watch the game. I could totally see that being totally like the norm in that time.
Yeah. I remember going to my grandfather was a Mets fan.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to Shea Stadium with him and sitting, him smoking cigars. I mean, literally, he would smoke cigars in there. While the Mets would just get killed. Well, the Mets would just get killed at that point.
Well, and then there was '86, which as Red Sox fans, we just Red Sox and Patriots fans, that '80.
That was a great year for you guys, though, because both teams went to the championship.
Both teams went to the championship, but lost to
two very good teams. I mean,
but now
that was the Bears you lost to that year.
'86, right? Like you're talking when I was like
10.
Around 10 or 11 years old, and I was very much following the local sports, like that being a very crushing. I don't know if I talked about this on the show, but like, 10 years old, watching my favorite football team and my favorite baseball team getting all the way to the final game and losing was a crushing year. So then you fast forward to, and we talk about this on the show, like I'll wear Red Sox jerseys and Patriots jerseys today and be very excited, and people are like, like Red Sox and Patriots, like, they're not big fans. But I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, when I was 10 years old, my teams went to the big game and lost, and it was another 15 or 20 years till my team started doing well again. And that's why today, like, I'll talk about my Tom Brady Uggs, and I'm wearing my Red Sox jerseys because I'm very proud of what my teams have accomplished today. And I don't know how that relates to cigars necessarily. I mean, cigars are a very celebratory thing. Like, New England fans have gone, like my age especially, have gone through that kind of, fits and starts with their team. So to have our football and baseball teams performing this well now is people today that have become Patriots and Red Sox fans starting in 2003, 2004, 2001, even when the Patriots started doing really well, like, you don't know how well you had it. Like, before that, it was an atrocity, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was hard. It was hard times. It was hard times.
I mean, I remember the Dick McPherson days you guys had where they brought him in from Syracuse. And then I remember when Parcells
coached the Patriots. Yeah. There was not a horrible coach, but we've come a long way. Yeah. Now, what's interesting, Will, and speaking of, like, going back into my childhood, like Jose Canseco, you said came from Cuba.
He came from Cuba, yeah.
Which, that was one of the baseball players, like, I look up to. Now, he was one of the ones that was kind of outed in that whole, steroid thing, right?
But he came clean.
He did.
Look, Jose Canseco, he had his clownish aspects. He was a heck of a player, and he came clean on it. That's not an excuse on it, but he did come clean on it. But when he was like in his heyday, I'm sure he was on the steroids. But again, it was everyone. I hate to say it. I'm not saying they were all doing it. So he
was on the Oakland A's when Mark McGwire was on the Oakland A's, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. He was on the Oakland A's, and he was on those. I mean, the A's had a great run in the late '80s with Tony La Russa there.
I remember that. Yes, I remember that very vividly. 'Cause that's when I followed baseball, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I remember the '89 was the this is dating myself, but the '89 World Series was the that was the Earthquake Series.
It was the Oakland A's, and who played the Oakland A's in the
San Francisco?
Yes,
was ironic.
yes.
I had been in San Francisco about a month beforehand, and then I had started my job out of college, and I moved into an apartment on my own, and I'll never forget that. it was basically I had the cable the first night.
You were so where were you living, Will?
I was living in a town called Goshen, New York, which is about 100 miles northwest of New York City.
Okay.
So it's Orange County.
That was the Earthquake World Series, yeah.
It was the Earthquake World Series. Yep, I remember that. I remember they were talking about it, and I'm watching. Then they started showing the highway. I had just been out in the Bay Area, so it was kind of weird, that whole thing.
Well, that's cool. I like that we get to talk about sports and stuff.
Yeah.
as part
I
of the
think it's part
Debonaire
of sports
ideal.
and cigar.
Yeah, sports and cigars. That was before I started smoking cigars back then.
Me too. I mean, I wasn't.
Yeah. I didn't start till college in probably the late 90s, but
I mean, really, I started mid 2000s when I got serious about it.
yeah, when I got serious about it, I agree. It was around the same time, Will.
Yep.
All right. Let's take a very short break, and then we're going to talk about our unbanded 303, which I think is going to be very interesting. So stay tuned. Duran Premium Cigars, one of the fastest growing boutique cigar companies, providing smokers a portal into the old Cuban tradition of perfect balance and the lost art of progressive flavor construction. Roberto Pelayo Duran began his career in tobacco over 2 decades ago in Havana, where his reputation grew within Cuban circles. The creation of Duran Premium Cigars has given Roberto the platform to introduce a series of cigars that offer the same quality, construction, and detail which he perfected while in Cuba. Brands include the ultra-premium Roberto P. Duran Premium Cigar Series, Azan Cigars, Nea, and Baracoa. Duran Cigars uses a seed-to-humidor approach, as all tobacco is grown in their farms and rolled in their factory in Estelí, Nicaragua. Rollers have been carefully chosen to carry out Roberto's precise method to ensure progressive flavor in each cigar. Duran Cigars invites you to make their premium your standard. Experience the world through the eyes of an icon with the new Macanudo Inspirado line. Created for a global palate, Macanudo Inspirado defies convention. Handcrafted with the world's finest tobaccos, Inspirado delivers a unique international smoking experience. Find Inspirado Orange at fine tobaccos everywhere and Inspirado Black online and in your favorite catalogs. Ready to be inspired? Check out Macanudo Inspirado now at macanudo.com. CAO has brought you iconic cigars over the years. Brasilia, Italia, La Traviata, done in a playful nature with a unique twist. Travel to the exciting world of CAO and back in just under an hour with any of the groundbreaking CAO World Blends. Test the boundaries of style with new age brands in the 95 rated Flathead. Honor the past with new classics like Pilon. Treat your palate to an array of flavors with Soulfire and Moon Trance. At CAO, the experiences are limitless. So what's your next move?
Hey, Paul, what's up?
What's up, Mark?
Did you hear about the new cigar that's coming out?
Which one is that? There's like 800 new ones every week.
The one with the Connecticut broadleaf wrapper.
Oh, really? I love Connecticut broadleaf. Who makes it?
I think it's Nicaraguan.
So Nicaraguan binder and filler, or it's made in a factory in Nicaragua?
I always have to Google these, and it's taking me like an hour to find out what it is.
If this is a frequent conversation with your cigar buddies, look no further than Stogie Geeks News, the only cigar news podcast on the internet. Will Cooper, the man behind Cigar-Coop.com, and Paul Asadorian from the Stogie Geeks produce a weekly show covering the latest cigar news, new blends, cigar manufacturer announcements, and more. Subscribe to the video version on YouTube or get the audio version in your favorite podcast catcher. Head on over to stogienews.tv to subscribe today.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Stogie Geek Show. It's funny, if people in our live chat are talking about our conversation about baseball. Someone was asking about Mark McGwire. Yes, in 2010, he did admit to taking steroids, which, you know, as a young boy following baseball and then hearing about that was kind of interesting for me. I also want to say, we talked about earlier in the show, Will, the Negroni cocktail. And our resident executive producer, Mark Anderton, not Mark McGuire, another Mark, made me a Negroni, and it was awesome, Will. And to go along with our interview segment for this evening, I lit up a Gurkha Evil. Will, this cigar, in the Churchill size, I think is a great cigar.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just want to give folks a very, very late-breaking piece of news here. Pete Johnson has announced the Unlucky 13, and you can see the list on Cigar-Coop.
Now, what is the Unlucky 13?
It is for the 13 stores that receive the custom boxes of his Monster. And this year's edition is the Kruger, which is named after Freddy Krueger.
And so these 13 stores will receive the Kruger?
They'll receive the Kruger, but they'll receive those custom boxes, which are usually
with all
hand-painted.
Oh, the custom boxes of the Kruger.
Yeah, which people just go crazy for.
So I'm curious. I'm always curious when this list is released, which one in the New England area got the honors.
You have one in Rhode Island, Cigar Smith in Tiverton, Rhode Island.
Wow, that's a store I've never visited.
I've never heard of that store. I'm going to be.
I've never heard of that store either.
Yep, we have one in South Carolina that hit as well.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that I actually So we had to wait till Pete actually put it out first. It's also on his Facebook page, but it also is on Cigar-Coop. But yeah, it's out there.
Awesome. All right, so unbanded cigar number 303. Visually, this was a Parejo in, I want to say, a Toro format with a closed foot. Am I right in my assessment visually in this cigar, Will?
It was a 6x50, yeah.
Okay. Now, I will stand by my previous sentiments of the cigar, Will, where I smoked it. It was very much medium-bodied for me, and while the flavors were good, they didn't, I had to really pay attention to it to get the flavors. And it being kind of a medium-bodied, medium-strength cigar, I thought, it didn't hit me with a blast of flavor. The taste was very good. I got some wood notes, a little bit of sweetness. But the flavors for me were kind of almost in the background, not so much in the foreground. Did you experience the same kind of thing?
Well, yeah, I did. But there was a very interesting flavor that I just couldn't put my head on what it was.
And I smoked the cigar on a pretty fresh palate, and like I said, I kind of had to work, really mentally pay attention to it to really experience this cigar. And I wished the flavors that it was presenting, and primarily I got some woody kind of notes from it, like I said, but I wished it was more pronounced in its body. I don't know, that's just what I thought of it, Will. Will looks like he's frozen.
You there?
Yes, you there? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
can you hear me?
Yes, I can. The internet gods are not with us this week.
Nope.
Nope, they're not. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you hear me, Will?
Yeah. Did you find anything unique about those flavors?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that... I thought, first of all, the flavors were very good. And I also found that what I had to mentally pay attention to, I thought they were pretty unique, the way they kind of came together for me in the cigar, and I enjoyed smoking it. Typically for me, I don't want to have to work so hard to get the flavor and taste experience from a cigar. However, I thought it was worthy of a 5 for me. In that it was a very good cigar. It was very smooth. Certainly, there was no harshness whatsoever to the cigar. There wasn't a lot of spice and pepper, but that almost was a positive as much as it was kind of like a negative, where I kind of had to work to get the experience out of the cigar that I wanted to experience. And cigars, regardless of strength, that rate very highly, present that flavor profile to me, and it's very pronounced. And the ones that work their way up to Oasis, right, present a very different flavor experience throughout the whole cigar, or very pronounced flavor experience. And this cigar, to me, was subdued, but not in a bad way. I thought it was a great smoking cigar, but to me, it was a 5. And again, being a Parejo with a closed foot in a Toro format, I had a tough time. I couldn't tell you where these tobaccos came from. This really, for me, it could have been anything.
I almost was wondering if something was infused in that cigar. With the sweetness was very different, and it wasn't something that wowed me with the sweetness, but there was something with that sweetness. I want to say maybe it was a flavor imparted from something. I don't know, but that sweetness, I almost want to say had this tequila note in it.
And I could definitely see that, Will. I had to really dig deep to pull out what this cigar was trying to offer. And I don't know if they could have fixed that by including some different tobaccos, more pronounced tobaccos in this, but
There was
I
something,
would almost try this cigar like first thing in the morning, like first cigar. This was the second cigar of the day I smoked in the afternoon. I would almost try the cigar like first thing in the morning when my palate is really sensitive to really experience what this cigar had to offer.
That's exactly what I would say on it. But yeah, because it was just something, I don't know, I couldn't put my finger, like you said, where this cigar came from.
Yeah, there wasn't like a pronounced like Nicaraguan twang to it. There wasn't a pronounced spice or pepper, but it was very well balanced, but kind of like low on the, I want to say low on the flavor profile because that's not doing it justice, but it wasn't it wasn't low on, not that it was a very mild cigar either. It was just very low on kind of like body and oomph to the cigar.
Oh, it also was low on complexity. I don't think it really was a complex cigar.
Right.
I had it as a 5er.
It was a 5er. It was a 5er.
Yep.
All right, well, let's do the reveal on this bad boy. I'm so curious to see what this is. I have the envelope here. I have an envelope here too.
Yep. I had no idea what it was.
and it was interesting. As I was smoking it, I really, truly, I had no idea what this cigar was.
All right, this is you know what's funny? This is completely not what I expected.
Is this a cigar we smoked before?
Yeah. I've smoked this and it tasted nothing like it.
This is the Enclave.
The Enclave.
Is it AJ Fernandez?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
I remember the cigar being a little more pronounced than it was.
I said the same thing, and like I said, the sweetness was, I don't know. I'm like, I believe that was the cigar, but it didn't. You know, the Enclave did cross my mind when I looked at the cigar because of the closed foot.
Yes.
But it seemed a little thinner than the Enclave normally is in that Toro size. Because it looked like more like a 50. I think the Enclave is 52.
Yeah, Habano wrapper, Nicaraguan, made in Nicaragua. What's that? We smoked the Toro.
The Toro.
It's a Toro size. I'm trying to get more on the blend. Oh, here we go. Cigar-Coop. You reviewed the Robusto, it looks like.
Yeah.
I can see the Robusto being a little more kind of concentrated.
I really liked the Robusto. That was a box-worthy cigar. I really liked that one.
It's an Ecuadorian Habano Rosado wrapper, Cameroon binder, and filler is AJ Fernandez Nicaraguan and Piloto Cubano.
Interesting. It just doesn't click with me on that one. And the funny thing is, I had smoked an Enclave probably about 3 weeks ago.
You rated the Robusto box-worthy.
Oh, I love that
I can
cigar.
see if in a smaller...
that was Bella the Ball for me.
In a smaller size, I can see where it had that oomph. In the Toro, it kind of lost a little bit of that oomph.
I would totally agree. It's more of a 5er in the Toro.
Yeah, I would definitely go Robusto on this side. If I had smoked this in Robusto, I would have rated it higher. I agree.
Yeah, funny. I was kind of going to my son. I said that third cigar really threw me for a loop, and he just started smiling. I'm like, I thought he really picked something completely off the wall.
No, that was a good choice. And like I said, I would smoke this in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, it wasn't a cigar you had to think a lot about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good cigar nonetheless. Will and I rated it a 5er.
Yep.
AJ Fernandez Enclave Toro.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Right now, we're going to take a break. We're going to do some stretch out. We're going to do a Stogies of the Week. We got some epic Stogies of the Week coming up. So make sure you stay tuned. Our Stogies of the Week are coming up next.